why we're talking about it. I'm not going to give you answers. I'm going to give you context more than anything else. Why the university is talking about it, why we think it's important, and why I want you to begin thinking about it in your roles as students, in your roles as student leaders, and also in your chosen professions. Now I'm going to ask a couple of things of you during our short time together, and I promise to be short. One is I want your attention. And those, I don't think any of you have worked with me, but those who know me, come on in, ladies. As I was saying, I want to ask a couple of things of you. I want to ask for your attention this afternoon. I promise not to be in here with you all afternoon, but for the few minutes that we are here, I feel like what I got to say is important. And I feel like carving out the space in my time to greet you is important. So I'm going to ask that you please listen to me. For some of you who may have technology of where you're able to do stuff on your phones, listen to music while I'm talking, I'm going to ask that you not do that while I'm talking. I'm going to ask that you give me the courtesy for those few minutes together. And I'm going to ask that you begin thinking also about those kinds of protocols as you prepare yourself to go into the professional arena. The rules of engagement have changed since I was your age because we didn't have this level of technology. And some of us have not been told that when we're in a gathering, and it don't matter if it's church, if it's lecture for class, if it's whatever, that those kinds of things really are disrespectful. And a problem with that is that sometimes people penalize you and don't even tell you you've been penalized. You don't even know it. You've been written off a list somewhere. You've been denied something because they've observed these things and have said, I'm going to let somebody else know about this. And you didn't even know it. And part of it is because nobody told you. But I'm telling you now. So I invite you to think about that as you continue your time as a student here, but also as you move again into your professional arenas, internships, and these kinds of things. All right, and again, thank you. I want to talk a little bit today about thriving in a global community. That's my chosen theme for today. And I'm going to move through some of these slides fairly quickly, but if any of you see anything that is of interest to you, please feel free to ask me a question. Feel free to stop by here at any time because I'm up here most of the time. Or feel free to request these slides or a slide that may interest you, and I'll certainly share all that with you. But moving on. Okay. Why are we talking about this? Why do you see diversity in AUM's mission and in the mission of most organizations and institutions, not just colleges and universities? But I want to focus on AUM a little bit for now in terms of why the conversation is important. Because AUM promotes itself as an institution that values diversity. Now, we've not defined diversity, and I'm not going to try to do that right now. It's a broad concept, and you have ideas of what it is, so just work with those ideas for now. But AUM values diversity. It prides itself as being an institution that not only welcomes diversity, but also promotes diversity. And it does that in a couple of ways. Again, I'm going to walk through these quickly, but I want to give you a context for our conversation today. AUM's core values. Now, when we talk core values, that's like at the heart and soul of who and what you are. That's like asking you, what is your motto in life? What are your key values that nobody can take from you, and you'll fight to the death to say, I believe in this, and you ain't going to change my mind on it? These are AUM's core values. And you can look on the website and see any of this as proof I'm not making it up. I pulled it from the website. Foster a diversity of people. All kinds of folk. A diversity of perspectives. What I believe about religion may not be what you believe, but that's okay. This place is big enough for our perspectives to stand together. And you don't have to stop doing what you're doing, and I don't have to stop doing what I'm doing. It's all going to be all right. But here's the one I want to draw your attention to. AUM students are learning to compete in an ever-increasing global society. And that's going to be my theme. Because we are living in a society, in a world, the United States, really the whole globe, but I'm going to focus a little bit more on the U.S. The U.S. is more diverse than it ever has been, and it's becoming more and more and more diverse. As a result of that, what colleges in particular, colleges, but also high schools and other learning institutions around this country are doing is saying if we cannot prepare our students to thrive, to fit into this society that is so diverse, then our teaching them math skills, computer skills, etc. is not quite enough. Because they still won't know how to deal with people who are different from them, who look different and who think differently. And they still are not going to be able to compete for jobs. So we're realizing that in an educational setting, it is no longer enough to teach you great math skills or computer skills or English composition skills. If we can't teach you how to use and apply those skills while sitting next to, while working for, while supervising someone who is different from you in whatever way you want to define different, it's not enough. You ain't going to be able to keep that job no way. And you may not even get it if those issues come up in the interview. So we have now got to begin talking about these differences and folding them into the academic curriculum the same way we fold in math lessons, English composition lessons, and so forth. So that's why we're talking about it. And that's why it's important to AUM. And look at AUM's vision. Increasingly known for its ability to prepare students to thrive. It didn't say to live in or to enter. It said to thrive. There's a difference between living and thriving. And so your vision statement is where you want to be X number of years from now. What is your vision? Where do you want to be 5 years, 10 years from now? And so in looking out in the future, AUM says, we want the world to know. We want the world to know that we want the world to know that we are a place, it's certainly in Alabama and certainly in Montgomery, that prepares students to thrive in a global society. Just a few more. Now the point, what I'm doing now is really trying to get you to understand who AUM says it is. Thus the reason for our conversations like this. Even in the strategic plan, they talk about diversity. And AUM even has a diversity strategic plan of its own that I'm writing. So not only do we have the major plan out there that talks about diversity, but we're also going to create a diversity plan that says specifically within this topic of differences, different people being in our community, preparing people to thrive in a global society. Here's our strategy for that. All right. I want to talk a little bit now about the context in which AUM and similar schools function. We're talking about this global society. I want to show you a little bit what it's going to look like, and I'm going to rush through these, so hang with me. I'm not reading these things to you now, so I'm going to assume that you're kind of perusing them as I go. The point here I want to make is that as we look to the future, now, and I got this from the U.S. Census Bureau, so I didn't make this up either. You know, you've heard these terms in America, majority and minority, right? Who's majority? In the context of race, who's the majority in America?
Caucasian.
Caucasian. Who's the minority?
Black, Hispanic.
Black, Hispanic, people of color, as the terms have come out now. And that's another thing, too. As research evolves around notions of difference, around diversity, new language emerges, just like in any kind of research field. In cancer research, the language that we use to describe research now wasn't around in the 60s and 70s. And so, like diversity, you will continue to see new language emerge, but that language is used to describe new discoveries. And so, I hear you when you say, I don't know what to say anymore. I don't know what the terms are anymore. But like any other topic or any other area, if it's that interesting to you, you go find out, rather than using what you know is no longer appropriate to use for all groups. So what we're saying here is that, ready or not, the majority will become the minority. And I'm talking very generally now. But as we talk about this unprecedented and global society, the majority will become the minority. And I'm giving you some figures here on this. The black population, and here by black we mean primarily African American, is going to increase. Asian is going to increase. American Indians will increase. Now this is interesting that you may or may not think about often, but there are a lot of people in this country who are not just African American, who are not just Caucasian, but they're a little bit of a lot of things. My mother's African American, my father is white or vice versa. My mother is Hispanic, Latino, my father is white or whatever. And it becomes very difficult for this demographic to find a place. As you know, you fill out these applications, they force you into little boxes. Mm-hmm. That's changing now. So as a result of what we're talking about, as a result of honoring and acknowledging diversity, we're not all the same, and you can't force me into a box based on who and what you think it ought to look like. The boxes are changing, and this is one demographic that's beginning to emerge. People who are not, whose parents are not both African American, not both white, not both Asian, not both whatevers, but there are intersections here. All right, I'm moving on. A couple of charts. And if you look here, you look at the races here, white alone. In 2012, we're talking 78% of the U.S. population considered to be white, whatever that means now. Because that's, when we say that, we're still avoiding and looking over a heck of a lot of diversity. And same thing if we say black. But in 2060, it will have dropped to 69%. Look at how this is working. With Hispanic Latino, in 2012 was 17%, but in 2060 projected to be 31%. Non-Hispanic white, in 2012, 63. No, my bad. Yeah, but in 2060, look, that will have dropped to 43%. So here we're talking about, and this gets a little complicated in here, because in 2060, this number will have dropped to 69% white alone. And wait a minute, my chart is off here. Okay, non-Hispanic white alone. Okay, here's my point. By the year 2060, every group that is considered to be white, whether it's white with some infusion of Hispanic Latino, because there is a section, even in the U.S., of Hispanics that are considered to be white, or whether it's white alone. The point here is that both of those will have dropped by 2060, and every minority group, and we're talking numerical minorities here, will have increased. And when you do that, and then particularly when you pull those minority groups, those numerical minority groups together, they quickly then become the majority. And this is what we're talking about, this unprecedented change. Every group of color is going to increase more and more, and by the year 2060, those minorities will be the majority. And there is a whole study out that's called The Browning of America, that sociologists are looking at and are saying in a context of diversity,